In today's World Insight, as AI becomes ever more entrenched in our daily lives, how will its development impact the future of jobs, innovation, and space exploration?
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Today we are focusing on AI and I. This is a series of interviews with innovators and thinkers from the world of artificial intelligence. The surge of AI has led to escalating electricity demand at data centers and the associated greenhouse gas emissions, raising urgent sustainability concerns. Starcloud is a network service provider and a unicorn that is exploring solutions in outer space with its first launch of data centers scheduled for October this year. In space, data centers will have access to more energy than can be obtained from solar panels on the Earth, with considerably lower energy costs compared to those on Earth as well. So this is a brand new idea and a bold idea. So how to implement those bold ideas into real practice? Industry exploring more possibilities in space. So how will that benefit all of us? On that and more, I talked to Philip Johnston, co-founder and CEO of Starcloud, to talk about his dream among the stars. Wow, what you're doing is amazing, trying to start the data center in the outer space by providing more energy. How does that work now?
Yes, so we're building very large data centers in space in order to be able to access the huge amounts of energy that you can get from solar panels in space. So we're going to launch these data centers on the SpaceX rockets. We're starting with our first launch in October this year. It's a much smaller demonstrator, so we're going to be putting up some of the first high-performance GPUs from NVIDIA and from others. And then we scale up every year. So next year we've got a second launch. It's going to be 10 times the size, all the way up until a full Starship payload bay size. Starship is the new launch vehicle coming from SpaceX.
So eventually the size of energy that's likely to be produced, what are we looking at?
So it could be anything up to 5 gigawatts, and we've got a concept video on our website which shows what a 5 gigawatt data center would look like. That's about 100 Starship launches of compute, with then many more for the solar panels and radiators. And we need a huge surface area, so 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers surface area on that kind of solar panel.
I love that. Very, very outstanding kind of image over there. Having said that, though, since DeepSeek, I'm not here to promote any specific company, I just use it as an interesting example, the open source has become the norm.
Yes.
And earlier, pumping money into energy creation and also scaling law for AI has, to a certain extent, changed that logic. To a certain extent.
Yes, yeah.
So what does that mean to what you are trying to do? Is energy for AI still the key, or actually we should look for other innovative ways?
We should absolutely look for other innovative ways, and we are very hopeful that there will be new models that come out that reduce the demand for energy for these types of models. However, if you're going to build a new data center, the energy cost we're expecting with Starship launches is actually considerably lower than the energy cost of building a data center on Earth. And that's because we don't have many of the costs that you would have on Earth. We don't need to pay for permissioned land. Yes. We don't need to pay for battery storage because we're always in the sun. And so long as people are using any energy at all, space is actually a much lower cost and better for the environment place to do any of that inference at all.
Outer space cooperation and competition. You know, if you look at it, not just from a business perspective, from another angles like geopolitics or national competition. So how does that work? Will this be just more a one country related scenario that what you're describing, or it can be global collaboration on this?
I think there is room for collaboration between countries. Certainly, we need to coordinate between the countries that are using space, because you don't want collisions to occur and this type of thing. So you certainly need to coordinate between, but also friendly countries can use each other's data centers as well.
You traveled here as a student.
Yes, I did.
You even studied Chinese here for 3 months, if I remember right.
A little bit, yeah.
Right?
You did.
How is this, multicultural background while you are growing up, in a way, can contribute your way of thinking of the future plans for your unicorn?
Yeah, I think my experiences in different countries has shaped what I'm doing now as well. So I was also spent time in the Middle East with McKinsey, working with the space agencies of various governments. That's really where I began to piece together some of these pieces. So the Middle East is very central to the energy economy.
Yes.
But then also they are starting to move into satellite building, and the same obviously with China has a very extensive space program and are moving very fast in that development. And I think if I hadn't been traveling, I hadn't had that multicultural background, I wouldn't have seen the development in China, I wouldn't have seen the development in the Middle East. And that might not have led to the creation of Starcloud. So it's been very helpful, I'd say.
Coming here in China, I'm sure you have met a lot of conversations in which people talk about why there is ban of certain technologies from the United States to the Chinese consumers or to the Chinese businesses, why there shouldn't be more space of cooperation. How do you see their perspective, and how do you see the nature of things these days?
Yeah, I think it's very sad, to be honest, that it's come to a position where now there seems to be a lot more tension between China and the US than there was in the past. I can understand the US wants to protect its national security interests, so I see why they've gone down the route that they have. But it is sad. It would be nice if there was more cooperation in the world. And honestly, I think things like this World Economic Forum is an incredibly good way for bridging some of those gaps. I think many people in the US are scared to come to China and don't really understand what's going on here. Coming here and seeing it for your first time, firsthand, is actually very helpful in empathizing with the Chinese experience and what the Chinese point of view is. So, for example, just when you fly in and you see there's just, I know from a academic point of view that there's been a lot of development in China, but when you're driving down the highways and you're seeing these enormous cities built basically from scratch in the last 5 or 10 years, just filled with apartments and people going about their daily lives and urbanization. And I think in the US people see this development and they see the stats and they're like, China's building huge energy. And when you see this is like somebody's family, livelihood, and this is like people.
Really personal stories.
And people get their lives improving, and it's not something to be scared of. It's something that you should be happy for the Chinese. Yeah.
And the green transformation here, which has a lot to do with what you are trying to do as well.
Yeah, I mean the amount of solar that the Chinese are deploying is absolutely incredible. Yeah.
But how to connect in a way, even though there seems to be the talk of disconnection and decoupling, but those are narratives. So how deep in the logic, in fact, there are threads that both sides really need one another. We know it's interdependence,
100%.
right?
It's very interdependent,
and both sides have leverages. They also have desire to cooperate, especially industries and entrepreneurship. So how do you see that?
I mean, both sides value the partnership that they have, and both sides need to cooperate. And in fact, for all of the talk of tension, every day there's hundreds of thousands of small acts of cooperation and collaboration to get this whole global economy moving and to be such strong trading partners with each other. So I think we shouldn't discount the amount of cooperation actually that does happen every day. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be nice if that was promoted more as a reality.
I'm still very curious about your idea of building data center in the outer space. So which stage are you now? And what do you think are some of the current steps of challenges and solutions you are thinking already?
Yeah, so we started about 1.5 years ago. We're now a team of about 10. So we've done the whole development of the first demonstrator satellite. And as mentioned, that one's launching in October. We'll then launch a second one that one's launching in August. We'll then launch a second one in October. And so the challenges that are left are, there's two big engineering challenges. And the first engineering challenge is, how do we dissipate all of this heat into a vacuum? So with Earth-based data centers, you have running cold air through past the chips. But because we don't have any air in space, you need a smarter solution for getting rid of all that heat. And the way we do that is we have huge deployable radiators that run coolant through and then emit that heat in infrared out into deep space. So that's one big challenge, is building very large, low cost and low mass deployable radiators. The second challenge
What is the key for that?
The key to that is, right now, the biggest radiators are on the International Space Station. They're extremely expensive and extremely heavy.
Yes.
And so you need to use materials which are extremely thin and lightweight and pump, certain types of new coolant fluids through them in order to do this cheaply and low cost.
Are those two things existing?
We're designing that. That is our core technology.
And what is the biggest difficulty of designing it at this stage?
It's making them light. So because it's very easy to build a radiator that's heavy. In your house, you have radiators that are made of steel, but it's finding materials that can be very thin and very strong, so that they are light and durable.
They're still in the process of making.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the other challenge that you just mentioned?
And the other challenge is, how do we make these terrestrial data center grade chips, things like H100s from NVIDIA, how do we make those work in a high radiation space environment?
Wow.
And so you have protons from the sun hitting these chips all the time continuously. And so we've been running a huge test campaign where we put the chips, state-of-the-art NVIDIA chips, we put them inside a cyclotron. A cyclotron is a particle accelerator that you can shoot protons out of and into these chips.
Yes.
So we have been essentially testing the space environment on these chips and seeing what we can do in terms of shielding and in terms of software in order to make the chips work effectively in space.
Now, what does that mean for investors? I mean, just thinking about your scenario and your story, I would imagine millions of dollars and even more have to be pumped into this to test and to eventually come up with the very inventive solutions. So what does that mean to you in terms of your relations with your investors?
So we've raised so far about $23 million, including a $21 million seed after Y Combinator last summer. So that enables us to get through the next two launches. After the first launch, we expect to raise a Series A. And after that, we shouldn't really need to raise again. And the reason is that initially our market is other satellites. So it's other spacecraft, particularly from Department of Defense or from commercial Earth observation satellites. So they pay a much higher price for doing compute in space than if we were just competing with terrestrial data centers. So from the Series A onwards, we expect to be cash flow positive. It won't be able to fund the development of the data centers to compete with terrestrial, but we will be able to get to a point where we're producing enough cash from selling to other satellites.
Also, interestingly, your name's association with big names such as Elon Musk or controversial names such as Elon Musk, how is that impacting on your interaction with others that you want to cooperate with?
Almost all space players in the West at least are dependent on SpaceX for at least some of their launches. It would be great for the industry if there was more competition. I would say SpaceX offers an incredibly competitive price, and that's why they have such a strong position, is because the service they offer is actually incredibly good. But in terms of how that affects our relationship with others, I wouldn't say we've seen any particular negative effects or anything like that so far.
Now, how do you see the latest, fever about AI? It has already become such a buzzword.
Yeah, I think that some people say that it's overhyped right now. I don't personally agree with that. I think it's underhyped still. I think it is going to change everything, and I think it is the most fundamental technology shift that we've ever seen and that we will ever see possibly.
Having said that, though, we also see other ideas of outer space exploration in order to create possibilities what we are doing right now on the ground. So how do you see your field can more relate to the other options and other branches?
So low-cost launch will enable many different space technologies. Among those are things like asteroid mining, I think will be a big business when we have low-cost launch. Things like mining minerals and elements from the lunar surface, from the moon, mining helium-3, for example, I think will be big business. Things like even space hotels and other types of communication like Starlink and other things, manufacturing in space in very low gravity, I think will be a big business. All of those will actually need compute in space. And so that's one of the key unlocks of big space infrastructure is also compute in space.
How much immediate opportunity you can seek with all of these new branches of both ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you would do if you had low-cost launches is what we're doing, which is building large amounts of compute in space. And the reason is you want to be able to use all of this energy, but you want a product which is very easy to get back to Earth. So if you're doing manufacturing in space, for example, you have to then re-enter, and that's still very expensive and will be very expensive for a long time. Our product is just bits, zeros and ones, and we can get that product back to Earth very easily. So the results of the compute is our product.
Wow.
So I think the most immediate opportunity is actually what we're doing.
You're watching World Insight. Coming up in the program, a conversation about capacity building for individuals in workspace in the age of AI. Next. Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Let's continue our series of interviews on AI and I. The rapid development of artificial intelligence holds the potential to enhance productivity and profoundly transform workforce development across various industries. As many are concerned that the age of AI will devastate the workforce, just as previous technological shifts have, some are devising solutions to mitigate this concern. Workera is an AI agent that produces personalized learning plans. It empowers organizations with AI native skills intelligence for capacity building and a competitive workforce for the future. Recently, I had the opportunity to conduct an exclusive interview with Kian Katanforoosh, a founder and CEO of Workera, on this topic. Let's hear more. What you are doing is going to the core of the future of many companies in the world. How to make sure the workforce is updated with the latest mindset for technologies. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think majority of challenges we're going to face in the coming years are related to the workforce. As AI is going to automate certain tasks or augment certain tasks, careers and jobs are going to be shifted. So I'm seeing a lot of movements in the workforce. And to enable that movement, we need to better understand people's skills. And that's where we focus on. Understand people's skills in a way that allows us to personalize learning, to match them to the right projects, to match them to the right teams, to create high chemistry organizations that are grounded in skills and are future-proof for AI.
Is this more related to working on the latest technologies as a result of AI, or is this more on working with the human part of the business community and also of the society?
I would say that every organization will have a mix of different personas that need to learn AI. At the top, you have AI Center of Excellence, engineers, scientists, analysts that need to build AI. They need to have the skills to build AI. And that's 10,000 skills. It's a lot. Underneath, you have engineers that are not computer science engineers. They are material science, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, material scientists. But when you give them AI skills, not to build AI, but to incorporate AI in their work, they can do wonders. And then you have the large mass of people who work in less technical roles. And there the challenge is mindset. How can we get them in a mindset where they are incorporating AI in their day-to-day, where they know how to talk to machines whether it is talking to a coding agent to do vibe coding, or whether it is talking to a spreadsheet agent that can help you in a spreadsheet system. All of that is important future skills.
How much do you think AI will replace human being at the workforce? I think probably that's on top of everybody's mind.
I would say that I look at the studies that OpenAI put out there, OECD put out there, and we're looking probably between now and 2030 at around 30% of automation on today's tasks. The World Economic Forum's jobs report this year also said that net, we will have a creation of 78 million jobs. So AI will likely create more jobs than it will take out. And I tend to agree with that, and I have historical data, let's say, to back that up. A few years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there is a framework, a coding framework that came out called React.js. React allowed engineers to create websites and interfaces way more easily than before. And people were freaking out, saying that it's the end of front-end engineering. We don't need these engineers. But 5 years later, we still find that that specific job is in high demand and low supply. And I think that's what's going to happen. AI, people who are good at using AI are going to be in high demand and low supply, even 10 years from now. And I think there's going to be a lot of job creation on that side.
Yeah. What kind of jobs?
Anybody who's able to provide an experience. In the US, registered nurse is in high demand, low supply.
Here too.
Exactly, and I think the pay is going to go up. People don't want to do these jobs oftentimes, but it's highly needed for the workforce. A lot of experience providing jobs are going to go up, I think. And then on the other side, cutting edge expert jobs, I think are also going to go up in demand.
So from the technical side, how are you trying to create new options for this kind of training and preparation for the future happening?
The first step would start with assessment. If you don't understand people, you can't understand what will help them most. So the first agent that we build is an agent that will talk to you, that will ask you to write something, that will ask you to speak or code, and will give you a score and tell you this is where you are and this is where the bar is. That's the first step. But once you know your gap, then the question is, what are the opportunities that we can open up for you? Should you do a project? Should you talk to a mentor? Should you take a class or do a micro-learning segment? All of that is determined after you assess. And then the AI agent will figure out the actions for you. So now we're looking at an individual, but imagine a large organization with 100,000 people. As a manager, it's very hard to tell your employees or your workers what they should learn. You can't keep track of the content that is out there. You can't keep track of the skills of everyone, but AI can. AI today can track the skills of 100,000 people. It can track the latest and greatest content that is useful for them, and it can do the mapping really quickly.
But there's still the problems sometimes of hallucination, inaccuracy, and the list goes on.
I tend to think about the stakes involved. Like for assessment, I can be assessing your skills for learning purposes. And if I get it wrong, you can retry and you can do it again. And so hallucination is a problem, but it's not a big problem. In recruiting, I'm making a decision on giving you a job or not. It's very high stake. We can't have hallucinations. It's too risky. And so depending on the use case, we might need to refine our AI way more, to put a lot more research and development into it. But in lower stake use cases, people want to get access to the system and they will deal with the hallucination. They know that maybe 2% of the time the AI will hallucinate, and I'm okay with that risk.
But on the other hand, you are dealing with people and also companies. Many of them are very well established, over 50 and probably 100 years and longer. They have their own culture. So you know how hard it is to change a bureaucracy. But it seems that you are trying to change that way of thinking within all these big entities. How does that part work in your job?
You're right. A 100-year-old organization that operates in Mandarin is going to look very different than a 20-year-old organization that operates in German with a very specific different culture. those things can be uploaded in the AI so that the AI uses the right wording, the right terminology, the right language, and knows who it's talking to and can adapt. And that context is critical. Otherwise, people lose trust in the system. They don't find it relevant. It's almost like I would measure your skills without knowing who you are. It would not make sense.
On the other hand, it's so many different cultures, right? And the way people express themselves, even in an interaction with AI, is very different.
Yeah.
So that kind of culture adjustments, how does that happen with your, systems?
I think context is part of it. I don't think we've quite figured out the whole problem. Like, AI tends to be really good in this case in English, in Mandarin, maybe available, for certain cultures, but it's still a very open problem.
You seem to have very rich data as a result. How does that work for your future development stages of your work?
Well, in my case, we consider ourselves an AI application company, an agent company, which is different than a company that trains AI models. So the data that we deal with is not used to train a model. That's what DeepSeek would do or OpenAI would do, training the foundation model. Data for us is context. I am learning about your context in order to mentor you better. I am not training the AI on it. So we are in a different state of mind, different privacy implications than a company that would actually train the model on that data.
How would you be able to focus on the real essence? That's a big question, isn't it?
We want to learn at the speed of light. That's how we want the world to be. We want anybody in the world to be able to learn super, super quickly. And that's the metric. It's learning velocity. Is how much are you able to learn in 1 week? Way more than you could a year ago, even more than you could 10 years ago. My mom worked 37 years for the same company, basically on the same job. She didn't need to learn every day. Today, the world is different. Today, if you want to work in innovation, if you want to be at the cutting edge, if you want to not be left behind, learning velocity is your metric. It's what drives you. Learning velocity is the competitive differentiator for individuals and companies today. So that's the big metric.
There's so many narratives, right, about decoupling, about, disconnect, and about also reality about technological bans, on chips and this and that. So when you think about your global map now in terms of where you can go, how are you processing all of these narratives?
Anything that gets in our way is a bottleneck for us. I don't want to have, frankly, as an entrepreneur, to have to think about which regulation is going to block us from doing something, which national security interest is going to block us. I think that as an entrepreneur, I would like to build a great technology that can help a lot of people and get it out there as fast as possible. I understand the competitive landscape out there, and I understand regulations are needed as long as they don't slow down a potential technology that could level the playing field out there for people.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.